should come primarily from government sources. We'll see also that prevention will be enhanced in the post-fire environment with a focus on smarter construction and landscaping. And the top concerns that we're seeing here are common. They're shared concerns, and progress that we've seen so far in the few months that we've had has been minimal, but there is some that we'll be able to report on. The first question that we asked on the poll was, how has your business been impacted by the recent fires in our region? And we found out, and I think we've already heard a little bit about this already, that the fires have had an impact on almost all of us. And pay particular attention to the bottom there where it says only 24% of our respondents reported that they have not been directly impacted by the fires. That's pretty significant. 3 out of every 4 of us have been impacted one way or another. Also, 2 out of every 3 said that the fire had a direct impact on some of their clients, partners, or vendors. And we see that over 2/3 of the businesses reported that the fires had a direct impact on their business or on their workforce. An interesting side note on this too, we asked the same question just at the last forum, the Workforce Development Forum. And so just in the 6 weeks or so, in between asking that question, we saw these numbers go up quite a bit. I think we had 36% reporting that they had not had an impact prior. So we're seeing that the impacts of the fires are actually increasing at this point. We wanted to know, looking at the recovery, what steps will be included to decrease these risks going forward. We asked, the question was, where should funding come from for alternative risk mitigation strategies that could be explored by residents, businesses, and government entities to better manage wildfire risks? And we found pretty clearly that these mitigation efforts should be funded by government, at different levels of government, but primarily at the state level. The federal and the local government also, about 3/4 of us responded thinking that some of the funding should be shared. As we look down and we see, as we move away from the government sources, public-private partnerships kind of straddling the line. Interesting too, and I think this is one of the big issues that we see, is the expediency, the urgency that we're dealing with here. And that's why I think we see something like a ballot measure only getting 12%, because we know that that's more of a long-term solution, and we're probably, at least based on what we're seeing, focusing more on the immediate and the quicker solutions. We established that we need to look at government to fund some of these alternative strategies. We found that risk mitigation strategies should focus on how we build and maintain structures and landscape. So what are some of the strategies that we should consider? Really interesting when we look at the top 3 here. Fire-resistant landscaping, infrastructure, building materials, defensible space, and vegetation management. These are all proactive strategies that need to be addressed in the planning and building stages, and landscaping and maintenance. So really the focus was on these that are going to have more of a long-term prevention impact on us. And then of course less as we move down to some of the more local and transactional opportunities like fire sprinklers and things like that. Looking at some of the possible changes that could come about as a result of the fires, we asked if businesses might be considering any strategies to supplement traditional insurance to minimize the impact of fire damage in the future. And we did not find an overwhelming level of support for this, at least at the moment. Notice that 80% of the responses that we got said that they had no immediate plans, or probably maybe no plans at all, to look at some of these either now or in the future. The one that did generate a little bit of support was business interruption coverage at 17%. We did, however, find that there's some consensus in terms of identifying the most important factors in terms of what it will take to build back to normal. So we looked at what are the biggest concerns that we have right now in terms of building back, and then we also wanted to know how would you say we have progressed so far on these areas. And I apologize for all the content on this slide. I'll just kind of summarize it really quickly. When we look at the factors that were rated the most critical, we see the focus is on immediate and expediency. Notice on the right side of the chart, only 2% did not rate timely debris removal as extremely critical or critical, and pretty much the same for accelerated permit pulling. And I think the shiny objects here were probably the words timely and accelerated. Seem to really resonate the most. One other thing I wanted to point out here that I thought was interesting is relaxed regulatory requirements. For anybody that's seen the results or participated in any way in the BizFed Pulse poll this year, we saw government regulation as being, I believe it was the #2 business concern for business leaders in our region. So it's interesting that although 53% did consider this to be extremely critical, we did have over a quarter, 26%, rating it as moderately critical or minimally critical. When we look on the bottom chart there in terms of how progress has been made on this, how we think the progress has come along thus far in the couple of months we've had to deal with this, interesting that there is a positive here. And if you look at the very bottom, timely debris removal, only 16% rated this as having minimal or no progress at all. So we had an overwhelming majority saying it was either being excellent progress or moderate progress on that. So there is some sense of progress being made so far. Then looking ahead, we wanted to get a sense as to what the legacy of the fires might be. And we recognize that as extreme tragedy as this was, there could be some positive impacts that come out of it based on the lessons learned and the actions taken. So we asked, what do you think will be the most significant long-term impacts of the recent fires in our region? And then we found out that while the impacts, we tend to look primarily at what are the fiscal impacts for ourselves, our personal lives, our business lives, and we see higher insurance costs, higher housing costs, budget shortfalls, disruptions resulting from businesses and residents waiting 2 or 3 years to be able to re-inhabit their homes or offices. But notice also that there are some positive outcomes that we're expecting, whether some of that can be the rebuilding that ensures structures are resilient to future wildfires, so we're thinking toward the future, more underground gas and power lines, and improved water storage and distribution capacity for firefighting. So kind of a mixed bag where we're seeing some positive and some negative impacts that will come out. Finally, and this caught me off guard a little bit, I thought this was kind of interesting. We asked the question, should any of the following industries be prioritized for relief programs or funding? And in other words, do we play favorites on this? And the answer was, yeah, we should play favorites, which I thought was interesting. Notice that only 19% said no, we shouldn't identify specific areas for funding versus other areas. Housing development in particular, 61% pointed to housing development as an area that could benefit from priority funding. I thought that was kind of interesting. Finally, we always like to ask an open-ended question on these polls for anybody that's taken any of our polls before, and it's always my favorite part to go through and see the results of these. Interesting here because we asked a very simple question, which was, do you have any advice for businesses navigating post-disaster funding? And we can see that there's some positive and some negative. It's a real mixed bag. You know, everything from don't pass up on any assistance opportunities, that's legitimate, and then we have things like do not depend on government. So we get kind of a variety of opinions there. I think that the final note there, good luck. It's going to be a long and painful process. I think that's probably, probably what we all need to keep in mind. It's going to be a long process, and at times it will be painful, but good luck to all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill, for that very important and insightful intel. Next, I'm going to bring up one of my favorite people, Tracy Hernandez, the CEO of BizFed and NCC and BizFed Institute. She hired me 8 years ago and also promoted me quite often into this position about 5.5 years ago, so I'm a little biased. But Tracy, take it away.